Hi, everybody, and welcome to the third episode in the new Stephen and Oliver Show podcast series. We're really getting into a flow now and getting quite excited by the responses we're getting already. So thank you very much for that. And as we said, we're going to want every episode to have something actionable and takeaway for you. And this one's quite an interesting one. It's more work specific than perhaps the first couple have been. But we've called this one How to Performance Manage People Up or Out. And I think this is something that is not covered in anywhere near enough detail by a number of companies. So when I bring that subject up, Stephen, what's the first few things that come to mind for you?
It really hits home, huge, because I think I would say this is probably top 5 mentoring and coaching topics when I'm working with businesses, 100%. And a lot of the times it's, I've got this person, they're not doing as well as I would like them to do. I'm not sure what to do. Or I've got this person that's doing really, really great, but I'm struggling with how to make them even better because I don't feel I've got the right tools or the right information to sort of guide them along. Sadly, it's very hard when you've worked in a family business generally or any business for a long period of time and the team have been together for a long period of time and the business has changed. And you're then looking at the business going, well, actually, the business needs X, Y, and we believe there's people within that business that can't deliver that anymore. What do we do? And it's no joke. I think it's very, I've known people, sleepless nights and really worried about it on how do we start to deal with that. And I think this podcast is absolutely just going to give some people some key things that they can do to help the process. Because a lot of the time it's because of the lack of communication, lack of understanding, lack of the right kind of conversations. I hear people say, talk to them all the time, down the pub, or talk to them, here and there, away from the business, but I don't actually have the talk. The talk that I'm having isn't the right talk. How do I have the right talk? How do I frame it? I've even had as early as last week where I've been working with one of my clients and I've actually helped them with orchestrating the actual conversation and the right kind of chats because they've never done it. 20 odd years they've never done it because they've never had to do. I think when you've worked in that corporate world, I guess there's some things that you've had to do in that world, but not everybody goes through that funnel because they may not have worked in that size of business. So there's a lot of things there to unpick, but fundamentally it starts with: do you know your people? How often do you spend talking to them? How vulnerable have you kind of made yourself even to get to know those people? Because that's a big part of it as well. To shed that light, you need to have had the conversations. The conversations need to be documented in some way, and you need to have a process. And I think that's what we're going to uncover today is actually there is a process.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the big thing there is what I hear and what I see too often, and that often can be the reason that I've been brought in. I expect it's the same, is because things have already gone wrong. And that is because no one has spoken about anything until it's gone too far, or things have got too strained, or what have you. And exactly what you've talked about, people have danced around the issue, so they feel like they've got a good relationship because they talk about nothing relevant, nothing important, nothing that needs to be said, but it feels like we speak well, we communicate well. So again, talking about actionable takeaways, the first thing I'll do is, if this resonates with you and you're having some challenges, have you ever honestly had a good conversation with the individual or people or teams about the thing or the things that are going wrong? If you're thinking, I have a great conversation, but it's about the football, or it's about last night's TV, or shared interests, or, not wanting to crap on one of our early episodes, but they're your accountability buddy for the gym, but also they're not doing a great job, then there's a challenge here, isn't there? So that's the first thing, is recognizing that often it's because we haven't had the conversations. And look, the thought of having the conversation or conversations that you need to have is far, far worse than actually having them.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to say they never go wrong, because that would be, a mistruth. They do sometimes go wrong, but more often than not, if you approach it in a sensible manner, which anybody we've worked with is set up in the best possible way to go into these conversations. And I'll be honest, I don't think it's ever ended badly for any. I can't remember a time it's ended badly for my clients who've spoken to me about what their issue is and how they would like to resolve it, and we've given them some ideas about how they might go off and do that. And I think Stephen will probably be the same. It doesn't end badly because we set them up to ask sensible questions, do things in the right manner, and not go in with the pointy finger and make accusations. They talk about it in the most sensible way possible. So the first thing is challenge yourself and be honest with yourself. Are you having the right type of conversations? The second thing that I would then add on to that is, are you having conversations? Because we're alluding to people who might have a good work relationship, but I'm well aware of many people who don't have much of a relationship at all with the people they need to at work. But if you're the manager, that's not okay. You know, if you're responsible for these people, if you're the manager, the owner, the directors or something like that, it falls upon you to start that communication. So for me, I always like a regular face-to-face or face-to-camera if you're in different countries or different parts of the country, over video or face-to-face for 15 minutes, half an hour, but on a regular basis. So what we're saying is one-to-ones. Do you have regular one-to-ones? Then I'll go and I'll expand on that in a little bit more. But aside from one-to-ones and regular meetings and so forth, is there anything that particularly comes to mind to you about the effective communication piece?
Yeah, the thing I was just thinking was about the preparation side as well is sometimes this falls down because you haven't prepared enough and you haven't thought about the right kind of environment to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And I know these days we're glued to our phones, and sometimes it can make these conversations quite difficult if the phone's in the room. So it's setting the scene, and so the right environment and the right planning beforehand. Appreciate that it's a two-way communication, not a one-way. So it might be that you might have some form of information that you want to give out beforehand to prepare that person for the conversation that you're going to have, and which I've always found that really, really useful, and it backs up the one-to-ones. The other side to this as well is not to confuse a conversation with a conversation like this about performance management with salary, which I see happen quite a lot, where they become one of the same conversation. Actually, they're not. One is around how someone's doing at work in terms of their performance, how they're doing their job, how you can help them best do that, and understanding from their perspective, are there any boundaries that are stopping them from doing the job? So those sort of conversations. And then the conversation around money is a separate conversation at another time. And the nice thing about one-to-ones, you can do them as frequently or as infrequently as you like. And I would say frequently, because the more you do them, the more comfortable everybody is, the more things get brought up, the more things that get put out there. So I think the one-to-ones is a great start. I would also do what I call this thing around expectations, which is really a thing to do as well. And that is at the start of the month, or it could be the start of the year, you then say, what are your expectations of me of your line manager for the next 6 months? And what you're doing there is you're trying to get the person to sort of identify, well, how can I get the right things out of you in that 6 months? So I think the expectation setting is a great one. It's a really good one that helps with the one-to-one. And the expectation setting is just around what do you want to get out of me for the next 6 months? And it flips it slightly, but we talked about accountability before, and what it actually does, it makes me accountable for the things I want, and then I can communicate those to that person, and then that sets a framework for them to help me.
Yeah, it's good. Now, I apologise if any background noise, you can hear me grinding my teeth. Stephen will now remember that he said one of the bad words for me because he talked about the word expectation. So I know what he means and I'm getting there, but there's a word that just makes my skin crawl about having expectations of people. So what we're alluding to there really is seeking some agreements with people. So, you're saying to them, at the moment it is an expectation because if you hadn't spoken to that person about what it is you expect, they have no idea, and therefore a manager could be thinking they're doing a great job, but they're not. But if that person's unlikely to volunteer what they expect of you, so you need to tease it out of them, then we can do what we need to do, which is convert those expectations that we might both have of one another into something which is actually helpful, which is an agreement, which I like. Agreements are good. So there is an old podcast that we've done on here, and I've done ones previously because I do labour on this point quite strongly, is there's the expectations are toxic, but agreements, that is the way forward. And that's how we'll end well. So that is exactly what you're talking about, really. You're saying let's reach agreements with people. You just had to use the bad word. I think I counted 5 or 6 times. Which just, I don't know. For those watching a video, you can feed back to me, did I manage to keep a straight face? Because normally I wince when that word's said. But all joking apart, agreements. And another cool little tip about this is I think sometimes managers feel they've communicated quite well, and I can sympathise with that because they have spoken a lot and they've told people what it is they need to do. But what they've not done is check that person's really listened and paid attention. And there's a really good trick that ensures that will never happen again. And that is to ask the person attending the meeting, especially if it's a one-on-one basis, to just recap, what have we agreed? There we go again with the agreements. But so what actions have you agreed to do today? So, you're sitting there in front of Bob and Bob, so what are the 3 takeaways you've got from today? And then they'll feed back. And if they haven't been listening, they'll stumble. Do not destroy them at this point, but make them realise, well, this is how I end a meeting, or this is how I'm going to end meetings from now on. So let's make sure that you're fully paying attention and engaged next time. If they forget a second time to pay attention, then you've already got a problem and you're identifying an issue. The likelihood is when they know they have got to really pay attention and that they're going to get asked to finalise the meeting, they will pay attention, and you'll notice a dramatic improvement in what they've agreed to do and the actions that they've taken. Because the other cool thing about agreements is when people make them, they really don't like to fail to meet those agreements that they've done. If they find out retrospectively that they failed to meet an expectation that's been had upon them that they didn't really know about, even if you think they should have known, they didn't, that can make them really, really angry. So you can go exactly the same environment in 2 very different directions with 2 very seriously different outcomes. So as much as I'm being a jerk, the point that we both make is valuable because you're communicating what it is you need, aren't you? That's the point. You're saying, because those team members are not likely to volunteer it very often. So you need to tease it out of them. And if you haven't asked what they need and then move that into something actionable, it's on you. And this is the thing that's often quite tough for management and ownership, is recognising that it's 95% your fault. And we don't really want to be in blame. Yeah. We want to be moving into solutions. So let's take that away and let's make sure that the bare minimum you're doing is asking people regularly the right question. Now, I do something about this, but you talked actually only a week or so ago about a presentation you did in a team where you talked about the areas of focus. I can't quite remember what they were, but you did a presentation where you'd basically done an audit. That's what you called it, wasn't it? An audit. Do you want to just talk about the audits you do?
The audits are really good. So basically what we do with the audits is we go into an organisation and we talk to the leadership team generally, and we get feedback around how they see the business, where the opportunities are, what could be done differently. But because we're talking to lots of individuals, not just the directors of the organisation, you get a real good feel for what's actually happening. And then what I do with that information then is I don't say Mary said, Jane said, Tom said. I summarise that and then I go back to the board and then say these are the 10 areas that if you could do something positive around, then your business will move forward. And that audit is just a really good way. It's almost like it's mini one-to-ones with X number of people and then summarising that data, which sometimes it's difficult for businesses to do on their own because no one's going to be honest. Because this is confidential, people can be honest, and we get some real tangible things that they can work on, which I think is important. And the other thing to just say here as well is it's also about making the right time, because I hear a lot of businesses go, well, I haven't got time to performance manage. I haven't got the time. And actually, you have got the time, because actually it's the most important thing that you will do in your business. One of the largest costs you'll ever have in your business is your people. The largest influence you can make on your business is through the people. So it just makes sense to spend your time there and get that bit right.
Absolutely. And also, I think when you're talking about audits, so I have an employee engagement survey that follows a very similar track, because it will highlight the areas of focus. And honestly, I don't believe sometimes that the business wants to hear, because I think the business possibly consciously or certainly subconsciously kind of knows what the issue might be, and it might not be what they like to think it is. Yeah. And if it comes back en masse that there is a problem in a certain area, which, let's be honest, both our audit, employee engagement survey, whichever one you take, is going to highlight specific areas, which are not vague. Neither of our approaches are vague. It's very clear. And it's going to say if there's a communication issue with management. And I sometimes don't think that businesses really want to hear that. No. And it's much easier to just blame circumstances or people or individuals. And that isn't going to work. It's just not going to work in the medium to long term. And in exactly your point, human resources are so expensive, but used effectively, getting people to be as productive as possible has massive impacts on your profitability, your performance, and everything. So, if you're not communicating with people, I can absolutely sit here and guarantee you have disengaged staff. Yeah. Now, to what degree of disengagement, I don't know. You want to go and find out about this stuff, I'll put a link in here about some of the pages to a company called Gallup, who do lots of worldwide statistical analysis into this stuff. I can back it up. I know if you're not communicating with people, you have disengaged staff who are probably giving between 40 to 6% of what they could be doing. Mm-hmm. So they're what we call sleepwalking through work. That's not a sensible place to be. Yeah. And it's really, really easy to get them to the barrier, to the mark you want to be, which is actively engaged. Yeah. And the first step is this very simple communication on stuff that seems like it might be awkward, that whole difficult conversation piece. But with the right support, with the right training, you can go into there with the best direction for that conversation. But if you're not able to get that training, you just need to be thinking about, what is the end game here? What results do I want? And am I giving these people the opportunity to feedback?
Yeah.
That's really the point, isn't it?
And it's really is about sitting down and thinking about the issue at hand, making sure you do your planning, making sure you create the right environment, making sure it's a two-way conversation, very important, and continue to build those relationships. But also be honest with yourself. If you carry someone that's not right for your organisation, the cost is massive. Do not be under any illusion. If you get this wrong, it is a business breaker. It's an absolute business breaker. So spend the time on it, get it right, don't be afraid of it, do your homework, do the reflection piece, create the right space to start having these right conversations. And like we said, there's a wrong conversation, there's a right conversation. The wrong conversation normally is skirting around the edges. You've got to, tackle it, be brave, have the conversation, but create the right time for it as well. The right amount of time. This is not to be rushed.
No.
It's very, very important.
And flipping that around, if you have somebody that you just don't see the changes in and you're not documenting it, you're not performance managing it, that takes a long time as well. Yeah. If you don't want it to cost you an absolute fortune, you can't sit with it for 6 months and, I keep telling you this, I keep telling you that, but you've not documented it in any way, shape or form. You've not followed a proper procedure and policy. I know it sounds a bit dull, but it's also really important, because it's probably going to take you a further 6 months if they're resistant to it, to help that person exit, is the way I like to describe it. Because if you do it properly and evidence it, you will be fine. Yeah. If you don't, it will cost you a small fortune. And if you're not careful, you could cause that person quite a stressful work environment, and we know where that can lead to as well. So no one wants that, and it's all based around lack of communication.
Yeah.
So the real takeaways here for me today are really simple. Look at yourself. If you're a manager or an owner of a business and listening to this, are you and your management team or the people around you having good conversations with people? If you're working for an organization, are you being communicated with on a regular basis? Because if you're not, that is poor. And therefore, if you have frustrations, that's poor performance management. It goes both ways. And you're right to, wherever you get the opportunity, to feed back. And if that's not received well, you've got to really question where you're at, because that's not a healthy environment. And whilst you might look at it and think, oh, well, the benefits are good, or the pay is good, or where am I going to go? This is where people get stuck. And, not everyone listening to this is going to be in a management position or able to impact on this. So I don't want them to think, well, what about me? You've got to have a good look at yourself, because if that's an environment you're in, what do you think it'd be like in a year's time? If nothing changes, or potentially it gets a bit worse, how happy are you going to be? And that's the end game, isn't it? We all want to be happy. Absolutely. The money is important. Of course, there's mortgages to pay and holidays to go on and nice things to have and blah, blah, blah. But happiness is number one. And if you're unhappy now and this communication thing isn't getting fixed, you're going to be just as, if not more, unhappy in another year's time. So what can you do about it now?
Yeah.
So...
And it's a two-way street, and that's the advice I would give. It's not top down or bottom up. It's a two-way. You've got to have that two-way communication, and you've got to commit to it, and you've got to give it the right time, and you've got to really see it as an opportunity of growth. If performance management is definitely an opportunity of growth, because you can grow your business by doing good performance management, and it's also an opportunity to make sure that everyone's pulling their weight and as productive as possible.
Yeah.
So it's two-ended for me. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with doing it, the stronger your business will be, the right culture that you'll be building, and the right two-way communication that we'll be building in there.
Yeah. I think there's one thing that I've just thought that I didn't really talk about with Stephen's audit, my employee engagement survey. One of the things I find a lot of companies that I speak to about who are going to be using things like the survey or having Stephen come in for an audit is they've done, I suppose, survey overkill a little bit, and they feel that they are communicating because they have this survey that goes like there's ones that go out every Friday or every month and so forth. And let me assure you, unless you are feeding back and making actionable changes from those as regularly as you're sending them out, you're wasting money and you're disengaging your staff because they're tired of it. And they might contribute, but they're not paying full attention to it because they're like, oh, well, they never listen.
Yeah.
But if they know that they're being watched, then they'll put it down and they'll just give sensible, boring answers, but you're not getting the truth of it because, you're giving them survey burnout. Now, if you're doing surveys or regular audits and you're feeding back the findings and you're saying these are the actions that we're taking based on those findings, then you're doing a great job. Keep going, because that's perfect. Question, you probably don't need to do it as regularly as you are, but if you're doing it, you're doing a fantastic job, because that's what people want to see. They want to see, I have an idea, it's been heard, and this is what we're going to do. Or equally, this is why we can't do it. Fine. Now I understand why that isn't being done. If you're not doing any of that stuff, but you're doing surveys, honestly, I promise you right now, you're wasting your time and any money that you're putting in towards it. You're far better off doing them less frequently, but more in depth, feeding back thoroughly, and then reviewing where you are in, say, 6 months' time with the actions that you said you've taken away from the feedback you've been given from your staff. So that's a really important one that you can do, is if you're doing any form of survey, review it.
Yeah.
Review it. How are you feeding that back? And of course, if you want some advice on that, me and Stephen are more than happy to do that. So it's not an intended sale pitch, but it is one through the back door. So for me, I feel that's some really useful takeaways there from people. As always, I like to give Stephen a final say. Anything you think we haven't covered, anything you want to reinforce?
I think something that you just picked up on there, I just want to reinforce at the end, and that's feedback. There's no such thing as bad feedback. All feedback is good because it enables you to do things differently. It enables you to really look at your business. It enables you to look at what you're doing, and and do something about it. So encourage the feedback, and ordinary, if you send something out, make sure you feedback on it, because there's no worse feeling where I've put my point of view across. I've given the warts and all, and then nothing happens.
Yeah.
So always give the feedback.
Yeah, absolute silence. I love the strap line. I'd love to claim it as my own. I've stolen it from somebody. There's no such thing as failure. There's only feedback. The only time you can truly fail is you fail to listen to the feedback. Love it. That's so up my street. So anyway, I feel that's a really good point to stop again. I feel there's some good actions. There's things that people can reflect on there. That's the whole aim of these episodes. So I feel we've handled that exceptionally well. Well done, us.
And I just want to add, I wonder how many more times I can get the word expectation in the next few podcasts just to see the teeth come out the ink.
Oh,
sorry, I have to get it in there.
I've just have I drawn blood? No, not quite. Anyway, thank you very much for the for paying attention on this episode again, and we've enjoyed producing it. We hope that's been useful, if not maybe slightly painful, and we look forward to speaking to you on the next episode.